The door closes softly behind her. Not a slam, not a click, just a controlled, deliberate push until the latch catches. Los Angeles, 1938. The room smells faintly of cigar smoke and furniture polish. No windows, one shaded lamp on a side table throwing light sideways instead of down. It makes faces uneven. It makes people look older. Louella Parsons pauses for half a second before turning around. She has spent the last 2 decades being ushered into rooms like this. Studio offices, private dining rooms, railroad cars, hotel suites with the curtains already drawn. She knows how power smells when it's trying not to announce itself. Usually someone talks. Usually someone laughs too loudly, or pours a drink, or makes a joke about how busy she must be. None of that happens here. Eddie Mannix is already seated. He doesn't stand when she enters. He doesn't gesture to the chair across from him. He doesn't even look up right away. He's studying a paper in front of him as if she's early or late or irrelevant to the exact second he's occupying. Louella clears her throat. Not to speak, just to remind the room she exists. Mannix finally looks up. His expression is neutral, not stern, not welcoming, the look of a man who has spent years learning how to show nothing even when he feels something. "Miss Parsons," he says, his voice is low, even, no edge. She nods and sits without being invited. Her purse stays on her lap. That's the tell. Louella Parsons never keeps her purse on her lap unless she plans to leave quickly. Outside this room, she is the most powerful journalist in Hollywood, the woman who can bury careers with a phrase or resurrect them with a paragraph. Every studio fears her column and every star reads it before breakfast. Inside this room she waits. Mannix folds the paper in front of him once, then again, slowly, precisely, each crease deliberate. The silence stretches, 5 seconds, 10. Louella starts to smile. It's her professional smile, polite, controlled, the smile she uses when a producer thinks he's being clever. "Well," she says lightly, "this feels ominous." Mannix does not smile back. He reaches under the edge of the table and pulls out a manila envelope, thick, worn, not new. He places it between them. He does not push it toward her. He lets it sit there, exactly halfway, like a marker on a chessboard. Louella glances at it, then back at him. "If this is about the piece I mentioned," she says, still calm, still professional, "I haven't written it yet." "I know," Mannix replies. His eyes do not leave hers. Another silence, shorter this time, intentional. Then he opens the envelope and slides out a single photograph. He turns it around so she can see it. It takes less than a second for her expression to change. Not shock, not anger. Calculation. The photograph isn't dramatic. No crime, no blood, just proximity, timing, context, one of those images that means nothing to the public and everything to the people involved. The kind of photograph that never ends well. Mannix watches her carefully now. Not her face, her hands. She tightens her grip on her purse, slightly enough to notice. He doesn't comment. Instead, he reaches back into the envelope and removes a single typed page. No studio letterhead, no signature. Just a name near the top, familiar, powerful, and not meant to be printed. He places it next to the photograph. Side by side. Then he leans back in his chair. He still hasn't threatened her. He still hasn't raised his voice. He hasn't even told her what the page is. That's the point. Louella looks at the page now, really looks. Her eyes track the lines, the margins, the spacing. She knows typewriters. She can tell when something was produced carefully and when it was done in a hurry. This was done carefully. "What is this?" she asks. Mannix shrugs slightly. "A problem," he says. She laughs once, a reflex too quick. "I don't see how," she replies. "It's not my problem." Mannix tilts his head just a fraction. "No," he says, "it's everyone." The lamp hums faintly. Louella shifts in her chair. For the first time since she entered the room, she feels it. Not fear. Pressure. The unspoken understanding that nothing said here will ever be repeated exactly the same way outside. Mannix taps the edge of the photograph once with his finger. "Tomorrow morning," he says, "there'll be a headline." Louella stiffens. "Yes," she says, "there usually is." He nods. "And tomorrow morning," he continues, It won't be the one you were thinking about tonight. She studies him carefully now, searching for sarcasm, threat, anything she can push against. There's nothing there. You're asking me, she says slowly, to kill a story. I'm not asking, Mannix replies. Another silence. Longer than the others. Louella looks down at the photograph again, then the typed page, then back up. You know, she says, if I don't print it, someone else will. Mannix nods again. They might, he agrees, if they're allowed to. That word lands heavier than anything else in the room. Allowed. Louella's smile is gone now, completely. She closes her purse and places it on the floor beside her chair. That's the other tell. When Louella Parsons decides to stay. You're assuming, she says carefully, that I care what permission looks like. Mannix leans forward, just enough to remind her he can. I'm assuming, he says, that you care where permission ends. He stands now, slowly, not looming, not aggressive, simply occupying space. He gathers the photograph and the page, slides them back into the envelope and tucks it under his arm. I won't keep you, he says. She doesn't move. You never do, she replies. Mannix opens the door for her. As she steps past him, he finally adds one more sentence, quiet, almost conversational. You've kept Hollywood safe for a long time, Miss Parsons, this is still that. She stops in the doorway. Doesn't turn around. Doesn't respond. When the door closes behind her, the room returns to silence. By the time Louella reaches her car, the story she had been teasing is already dying. She knows it. She just doesn't yet know what will replace it. The car door closes with a softer sound than it should. Leather seat, warm steering wheel, the faint buzz of the engine idling like nothing in the world has shifted. Louella Parsons doesn't start the car right away. She sits still, hands resting on the wheel, eyes fixed forward. The MGM lot security booth is visible through the windshield. A guard laughs at something another man has said, normal, casual, unaware. This is how it always looks after something important happens. Ordinary. She exhales slowly through her nose. In her career, Louella has been threatened before, not directly, not usually well. Most of them were emotional men, drunk producers, desperate actors. Studio flunkies trying to sound bigger than they were. This was different. No raised voice, no warning, no demand. Just information placed carefully in front of her, like a gun left on a table without comment. She starts the engine. As the car pulls away, she already knows what tomorrow's column will not contain. What replaces it is harder. Back at her home later that evening, she sits at her desk long after the house has gone quiet. A desk cluttered with index cards, clippings, handwritten notes in her sharp, disciplined script. The dangerous item sits on top. She doesn't touch it. Instead, she lifts a different card from the pile. A harmless one. A studio-approved anecdote, a mild item about a rising star seen at a dinner party. Fluff, safe, approved by no one, objected to by no one. The kind of item that fills space. She reads it once. Then again. Her fingers hover over the typewriter keys. This is where most people imagine resistance would happen. It doesn't. Because Louella understands something most people don't. Power doesn't need to crush you, it only needs you to cooperate once. She types. Outside, somewhere in the city, another call is being made. Not to her. To editors, to studio publicists, to two men who owe favors they can't repay and one who never forgets who gave him his job. By the time Louella finishes her paragraph, the machinery has already engaged. The next morning, newspapers roll off presses across the country. Millions of breakfasts. Millions of readers. And the headline Louella had hinted at days earlier simply isn't there. Not replaced directly, not contradicted. Just gone. In its place is something smaller, lighter, forgettable. Most readers don't notice. Why would they? But reporters do. Studio executives do. And a certain kind of man does. The kind who understands silence as communication. Phones ring in newsrooms before noon. No one asks outright. Instead, they circle it. What happened to that item? Change of heart. Did you hear something new? Louella answers politely, vaguely, she deflects with her usual mastery. But she doesn't joke. And she doesn't elaborate. That alone sends a message. Because when Louella Parsons doesn't explain herself, it means something happened behind a door that didn't stay open. By mid-afternoon, the lesson is spreading without ever being stated. There are stories you can chase. There are stories you can float. And there are stories that vanish overnight without explanation. No memo goes out. No blacklist appears. Just a subtle recalibration of instinct. A gossip columnist at a rival paper mentions offhand that he's shelving a piece he'd been chasing. Doesn't feel right, he says, no one asks why. A studio publicist cancels a meeting that suddenly seems unnecessary. A young reporter learns not to ask about a rumor involving a certain executive and a certain night. Nothing dramatic happens. That's the point. Louella attends a studio luncheon 2 days later. Same tables, same voices, same polite laughter, the room looks unchanged. But conversations bend when she approaches. People glance at her differently now. Not with fear. With awareness. She notices Eddie Mannix across the room at one point, standing near a wall, not central, not hidden either. They don't acknowledge each other. That's deliberate. Because this was never about dominance in public, it was about alignment in private. Later that afternoon, her editor calls her into his office. He doesn't shut the door. He never does. Big reaction to today's column, he says casually. Is that good or bad, she asks. He smiles. It's quiet, he says. He doesn't need to say more. She nods. When she leaves, she notices a file folder on his desk, labeled with a name she recognizes, one she herself had once protected. The pressure doesn't come from fear. It comes from understanding consequences. Every word she prints now passes through a new filter in her mind, not censorship, calculation. Who benefits, who loses, who notices. And more importantly, who allows. Weeks pass. The photograph never resurfaces. The typed page never leaks. The people involved continue their lives with a new, invisible shield around them. And Louella continues hers. But something has shifted. Not in her power. In its shape. She realizes that what makes her dangerous is no longer just what she can say. It's what she chooses not to. One evening she receives a short note, no letterhead, no return address. Just 4 typed words. Handled as discussed. She reads it twice. Then places it in a drawer she rarely opens. Because she understands now that the scariest moments in this town don't happen when someone raises their voice. They happen when everyone agrees to lower it. And somewhere in Hollywood, a line has been quietly redrawn. She crossed it without ever being told where it was. And now she knows something she can't unknow. This was not an exception. It was a demonstration. Louella begins noticing it in the pauses. Not the long ones, the tiny hesitations that slip between sentences when people choose their words more carefully than before. It starts quietly. A producer stops himself mid-story when she's near. A publicist answers a question she didn't ask. A reporter lowers his voice instinctively, even though no one has told him to. Hollywood doesn't announce its rules, it absorbs them. Weeks turn into months, the city stays loud, the parties continue, the premieres sparkle, but something underneath has gone cold. Louella Wright S column remains powerful, read religiously, quoted obsessively, studios still court her, stars still fear her pen. But now there are absences. Names that never appear. Stories that die before they're born. Rumors that reach her desk and stop there, as if unsure they're welcome. At first she tells herself this is control, professional evolution, maturity. Then she realizes something more unsettling. The decisions are no longer purely hers. They are shared. She doesn't receive instructions, she receives context. A look. A silence. An unexplained nod of approval from someone who doesn't normally notice her. Power has changed shape again. She never meets Eddie Mannix privately after that day, there's no need. Once, months later, they pass each other in a hallway at a charity event. He pauses, she pauses. He says nothing. She says nothing. The exchange lasts less than 2 seconds. It confirms everything. The most dangerous thing he gave her wasn't leverage. It was inclusion. The knowledge that she now sees the machinery from the inside. And that knowledge comes with a cost. Because once you understand how easily a headline can be killed, you also understand how easily a life can be protected or abandoned. Late one night, Louella sits alone with a story that should run. Its accurate source damaging. And this time, no one has intervened. No envelope. No photograph. No quiet fixer waiting in a lamplit room. Just her. She reads it again. Then she sets it aside. She tells herself it needs more verification, more time. The next morning, she feels something unfamiliar. Relief. That's when it hits her. Not all pressure arrives from the outside. Some of it settles in and waits. Years later, when outsiders look back on old Hollywood and ask how so much stayed hidden for so long, they imagine brute force, threats, blackmail, violence. They imagine fear as something loud. They're wrong. Fear was practiced quietly. It sounded like a polite meeting. Like a sealed envelope sliding across a table. Like a columnist choosing one harmless item over a dangerous truth. Louella Parsons was never silenced. She simply learned what silence could do. And Hollywood learned something else in return. That the most effective way to control a story is to make the person holding it believe they chose not to tell it. Somewhere that photograph still exists. Or maybe it doesn't. It doesn't matter. Because the lesson outlived the evidence. And in a town built on illusion, the most powerful thing was never what you saw in print.